Hello, everybody. Welcome to the SoxProspects.com podcast. We're the web's number one source for information on the Boston Red Sox from top to bottom, from Fort Myers to Worcester, across the Pike to Fenway, and all stops in between. Thank you for listening. My name is Chris Hatfield, and I'm the executive editor of Sox Prospects, and I'm joined, as always, by our director of scouting and of, I should probably have something here, but I don't because my brain is mush right now from this crazy trade deadline. My chief Titanic deck chair rearranger, Ian Kundle. Ian, it has been certainly a eventful trade deadline, both for the Red Sox and across the game.
Was it that eventful?
I mean, a lot happened. There were a lot of
for the Red
things.
Sox. I thought more was going to happen though, and then it didn't. It started with a bang and ended with a whimper.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, we'll talk about that. This is going to be the trade deadline show. There's really not a whole lot else to discuss. The draft signing deadline came and went without much of a to do. The Red Sox signed everybody that we thought they were going to sign. So that's really all there is to it. There's really nothing else to analyze as far as the draft signing deadline goes. That's our draft signing deadline analysis. So we're just going to get into the trade deadline, what happened, what didn't happen, what we think of it, what we think of the plan. And we've got your emails, of course, as well. Of course, if you want to send us an email, we'll start there today. You can email us at podcast at SoxProspects.com because we want to talk about what you want to hear about. And you guys had some thoughts. You men and women had some things you wanted to hear about, some thoughts. Actually, I don't know if women email the show. We want some, we want to fulfill our Title IX representation goals. So female emails, please. We love them. But anyway, yeah, podcast at SoxProspects.com. If you've got a question, thought, concern, anything you want to hear us talk about on the show, I'll get into this later with just kind of guidelines for emailing the show. And of course, if you want to support us, you can do us a few ways. You can spread the word, tell your friends, tell your folks, tell your in-laws when you go to visit them over the weekend, tell your teacher, tell your school principal, tell anyone who will listen to you who hasn't already blocked you on Facebook and Twitter. You can rate and review us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever it is that you listen to the show. 5-star rating and a nice review would go a long way to getting us into some new eardrums. We would appreciate that. We want to thank you all who supported us during the Sox Prospects donation drive. We raised a good amount of money for the site. We'll be able to use that to continue providing you the coverage of the system and the organization as a whole that we do. So we really appreciate the support. And one way you can show your support financially is on patreon.com/SoxProspect. Get some neat perks. So that's patreon.com/SoxProspects. With an S at the end. It didn't sound like I said it with that at the beginning. And if you're in England, it's Patreon. But yeah, patreon.com/SoxProspects. Ian, let's jump into it. I guess we should just read the trades first. Just in case anyone was under a rock for the trade deadline. The Red Sox made, call it 4 trades. Not really 4 trades, but there's 4 trades. Start with the first one we heard about, Ian, was I don't know, would you call this the biggest one or do you call the last one the biggest one? I'm curious what your thoughts are.
This is the biggest one by far.
This is the biggest one, yeah. The Red Sox traded catcher Christian Vazquez, the longest tenured player in the system, both in terms of major league time on the Boston Red Sox and in terms of being in the system. Drafted it was 2008.
Yep.
In the 9th round, the 3rd catcher they drafted that year. Kind of an afterthought at the time. $80,000 signing bonus.
Can you name the other 2?
Yeah, it's my job to be able to name the other 2.
Okay.
Ryan Lavarnway and Tim Fedorovich, of course.
Fair enough. Just make sure the people know.
Yeah, definitely. Fair. And those 2 were rated ahead of him for years before Vazquez kind of popped. Yeah, it's kind of funny that Vazquez is the one who went on to have the significant major league career of the 3. But traded Vazquez to the Houston Astros for infielder Emmanuel Valdez and outfielder Wilyer Abreu. Valdez made his debut in Worcester today, playing second base, hit his first home run as a member of the Red Sox organization. I don't know if you saw it, Ian, but little oppo job out of fastball. Might have even been off the plate. I don't know if it was a fastball, actually, but it was definitely almost off the plate.
It was a fastball. I tweeted about it, so yes.
It was a fastball. Okay, yeah.
92 miles an hour away, 96 miles per hour off the bat, 373.
Yeah, I was going to say it wasn't 473. It was off
373 feet.
Yeah.
So yes, I did see it.
Nice little bit of business there. And then outfielder Wilyer Abreu, who made his debut for the Portland Sea Dogs today, picked up his first hit in the organization as well.
Nice infield single.
Yep. Also, Red Sox made a couple of major league deals on Monday in acquiring catcher Reese McGuire and a player to be named later or cash from the Chicago White Sox in exchange for Jake Diekman in a move that Ian on it. Well, we'll talk about it in a minute. And then the Red Sox acquired outfielder Tommy Pham from Cincinnati in exchange for a player to be named later or cash. I can't wait until we've got everyone waiting with bated breath on who the players to be named later are, starting in like month 3 of 6. Remember, they have 6 months to do those players to be named later. So
I guarantee you both those players to be named later are going to be
Rule
things
5.
right around Rule 5. Yeah.
Yep.
Like it's going to be like Gilberto Jimenez going after the Rule 5 draft, but he doesn't get picked or something.
You think? Yeah, we'll see.
Something like that.
Jimenez for Pham, interesting. I could see it. I
don't. Yeah, I'd do that in a heartbeat, obviously. But yeah.
I see that. And then, of course, the other big one yesterday on Tuesday the 2nd, the Red Sox acquired first baseman Eric Hosmer, infielder Max Ferguson, and outfielder Corey Rosier. Right? I've got those positions right. Yeah. And a whole lot of cash. It says cash consideration is usually just kind of like whatever. It's a whole lot of cash. It's $44 million of cash considerations from the Padres in exchange for Jay Groom. So another trade that there's a lot of angles to analyze here. And Ian, let's start. Here's a proposal. Tell me what you think of this. Let's start talking about the deals individually before we then go to the big picture, because I think that's kind of the grand finale of what we think, if that makes sense. And we'll just go chronologically. So let's start with the Vazquez trade in a vacuum. The Red Sox made us think they were in a sell-off mode, moving their longtime starting catcher, who's a free agent this offseason, in exchange for 2 minor leaguers, straight up. 2 minor leaguers who certainly both top 30, I think we could say, in this system. I think we've got them ranked top 30.
Yeah, do you want me to say where I have them, or do you?
We could say. I mean, you can say where you have them if you want. I'm just gonna. I'm tweaking a little bit, but I mean, they're both going to be top 30,
like 16 and 23.
I think that's about where most of us have them, right?
16 and 22, actually. You have them 16 and 27.
Okay, that sounds right. I mean, it's throwing I mean, the thing when you trade for a guy, it's throwing darts.
Yeah,
we need to get familiar with a guy.
Those are rough estimates, and then that's the same with the drafted guys. It's going to get adjusted. Like, I mean, examples like Freddie Valdez last year, like there were decent reports coming back, and he's terrible. So it's like you never know.
Look, it's always a bit of it's not a guessing game. It's just kind of triaging, massaging the information you're getting, knowing where it's from, the context, things like that. We'll see what these guys turn into. I mean, it's certainly as an exchange, as a return for 2 months of Christian Vazquez, Ian. Your tweet said it. It's about as good as you can hope to get for 2 months of a rental catcher who they're apparently just going to platoon with Martin Maldonado.
Yeah, and that wasn't me. That was what I was talking to some scouts about the trade, trying to get info on the guys they got back, because obviously I'd never seen them before. I'd never heard of either of them before. And yeah, that was kind of like just a summation of the general consensus I got back, or the feedback I got from talking to those people was, that like at the end of the day, Vazquez, was a free agent in, 2 months or whatever. And you're just not going to get that much for a player like that. Like you saw at the deadline, the guys who went for the big returns were Juan Soto, guys. Luis Castillo. It's like the guys with multi-years of control, the rental types, the Brandon Drury, Christian Vazquez, like Noah Syndergaard, like those guys just didn't go for as good a return. And that's kind of, when you're trading Vazquez, that's about the best you can hope for is, you get a couple of guys that are in the top 30 and maybe, something clicks, or, they were a little undervalued, which they definitely could be. But I think the guys they got back have some interesting tools. I also think the reason they were available is because they definitely have some warts. With Valdez, his defense is really bad. I had multiple people put 30s on it, so that's like that's
not great, Bob.
Well below average.
Yeah,
but like he seems like he can really hit. And that's the thing is, like, if you can hit well enough, they'll figure out the defense.
Right.
So we'll see with him on defense. But you saw today he's got some pop. It's pretty unorthodox swing. He's pretty small, I would say. I think he's listed at like 5'9", 5'10".
It is
But
kind of a wild swing. I
yeah,
mean,
well, no,
it's
it's also like his front side is really weird. He's got this like
yeah.
weird like leg hitch thing, but I mean, it's worked this year, and we saw today at a nice swing. But he's interesting in that regard. I'm looking forward to seeing him out in Worcester when I have a chance. And Abreu is kind of the other end of the spectrum. He's definitely got some defensive ability. There's some tools there, but he's pretty raw, and there's just like a lot of swing and miss in his game. Strike rate I think is like close to 30% this year. But he's got power, he's got speed, like it's a good, interesting flyer type. And I think that with Abreu especially, he fills kind of a hole they have in the organization where they just don't have any upper minors outfield depth
Yep.
with like intriguing prospects. That's a nice little like spot for him. And
Does he immediately become the best? Well, I guess behind other than Rafaela. I was going to say, is he the top outfield prospect in the high minors? But I'd say
it's
probably the second behind
Rafaela, but
second behind Rafaela.
yeah, I would say so. And like with Valdez, like you look at that Worcester team, and there's just not a lot in the infield that's interesting. Like beyond, I'm not counting Costas because he's a first baseman, but like
Right.
of the guys who can play second, third, and short, like Jeter Downs is a good defender. He can't really hit. Ryan Fitzgerald is what he is. Peraza was signed like a week ago.
That's the other thing we have to mention is the Red Sox signed Jose Peraza, and who is the other one that gave people palpitations?
Danny Santana.
We
talked about that on the last episode.
No, we didn't.
Yes, we did.
Did we?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe we did. Anywho, yeah, but you're right. I mean, they also had a whole lot of just like, double A guys filling in triple A. So double A is now thin. You've got Nick Sogard, Cameron Cannon, and Grant Williams has been in triple A all year, but like Sogard and Cannon should probably be in double A.
Yeah, I mean, they just don't have enough position players in AAA. And like, I'd say Valdez immediately jumps into me as the most interesting of the non-Tristan Casas position players on that roster. And it's just going to be interesting to see kind of like what he looks like and I'm most interested, honestly, to see the defense. I need to see how bad this really is. Like, can he fake it somewhere, or are we really talking like a DH type? And so kind of looking forward to getting a look at him. But like, they got some guys with some ability, and I think that's all you can ask for. And I think that like they're both, proximity wise, like maybe Valdez is up next year. If Abreu figures it out, maybe he's up at the end of next year or the year after. Like at some point, it is nice to get some guys with some proximity and some ability. So I know they're not the highest ranked guys, but I think they're two interesting players to get back.
Both guys are eligible for the rule. Well, I should say this: both guys need to be added to the 40 man.
Yeah, they're definitely. I mean,
Valdez is a minor league free agent. Never mind, eligible for Rule 5. Like they need to put him on the 40 man to let him not reach free agency.
I mean, I would assume he's a lock to be added if they have acquired him,
right? And, if they bothered, no question. Abreu, how certain do we? How certain do we think Abreu is? I guess that's the question.
I mean, well, we're gonna have to see how he performs. We're gonna have to see what he looks like. But he's got some of the characteristics of things teams can stash. Like he's got speed, he's got defense, and he also has like a good eye, at least at the plate, with a little bit of pop. Mm-hmm. So like I think he also has platoon splits, if I remember correctly when I was looking at him. That I feel like that type of profile might have to be protected.
Could be. That's true. It's like a double A. Not Gilberto Jimenez.
No, it's a different type of player.
I'm trying to think of a comp.
I guess his platoon splits are pretty average both ways. So maybe he doesn't really have noticeable platoon splits.
Okay. But at any rate, and I think it makes clear to me, and I think you probably made this point too, Ian. They weren't going to give Vazquez the qualifying offer. I think that's
looking back, like after everything that happened with him being the only one that traded, I think that was what kind of influenced their willingness to trade him. Was he was someone that was definitely gonna, if they didn't re-sign him, he was gonna walk for free at the end of the season. And whereas with Eovaldi and JD Martinez, they could always fall back on the QO to get them. So I think that was why they were willing to take maybe less than what it's apparently, I think it was Buster Olney or someone said like the asking price for Eovaldi was absurd.
Yep.
And it seems like that those were the two yeah, they were asking the moon for. And frankly, and I think this is kind of what we like. Eovaldi was irreplaceable. Like if you traded Eovaldi, you were completely mailing everything in for the season. JD I thought was the most replaceable, but when you factor in like what the lineup is without him, I think Vazquez is more replaceable on offense, especially if you're getting an upgrade in right field and first base. And I think that was the calculus they went from, is like, we're replacing two, I guess this is kind of like the overall arching thing.
It is. It is. I mean,
it fits here. So
yeah, just go for it.
That like, we're replacing two basically non-productive spots in the lineup with two, serviceable at least to better big leaguers in Eric Hosmer and Tommy Pham. And we'll take the downgraded catcher, but still get good defense. And, I understand where they're, I understand the calculus there. I think, yes, then we'll get to it, but I think they're a better team now. It's just, Vazquez, I think, had a connection with the fans because he was here for so long that has made it tough. And he obviously was well liked in the clubhouse.
Yeah, connections in the clubhouse, man. Yeah.
But like at the end of the day,
it's a business.
As he said, it's a business. And yeah, they got some, they got, two interesting prospects for him. And the team is still better. So I think that's, why he was open to being dealt and why they did deal him.
Yeah, I think that's the overall, right? Because like McGuire's under control for a couple more years, I think.
Well, and they have no catching. Like they don't have an everyday catcher in the system. Like I like Connor Wong, and people were weird about this. I said I really like Connor Wong, but he's not an everyday catcher. And like that, just because a guy isn't an everyday catcher doesn't mean I don't like. They still can be a usable player. Like
right, you could still be.
You're not going to have a 40-man roster of guys who are everyday players. That's just not how it works.
Right.
So that was just strange to me. That was like people were getting weird about that. But Connor Wong is like a very good defender. He works with the pitchers well. He seems well liked by that. I personally I'm almost at the point where I'd rather see him on the major league roster right now than Kevin Plawecki, who literally adds nothing on offense and can't really throw anymore.
Right.
So I don't really know what he seems to be good with the pitchers, I guess.
I mean, I could tell you exactly why he's still there. You can't jettison both of your catchers.
But the thing is, Connor Wong's worked with he's worked with.
No, that's true.
Aldi, but
that's true. I just mean
he's also hurt right now, so it's a moot point. But yeah,
exactly. He's hurt right now, and I think it's that. Like Plawecki's the guy who came up with the laundry cart. Like,
I mean, he's also hitting like 140 for the season.
100%. And I'm not saying I'm in playing devil's advocate a little bit here, right? He's
hitting 170, 263, 503 with a robust. What's his OPS plus this year? BREF doesn't have it, but yeah,
503 doesn't. 503 must be his OPS.
Sorry, I wanted to see like his WRC plus, but
no. Okay, yeah, no, I know. You just
but
said
he's adding nothing at the plate. Like,
and has he thrown out a potential base stealer yet?
No, 2 for 22.
Right.
Last year's 3 for 37. So yeah,
he's like a pitching staff, I guess.
But like I think that that's the biggest question to me, and obviously discussion we're gonna have to have a lot more in the offseason is where they go at catcher, because they don't have anyone in the system. I project as an everyday guy. Connor Wong, nice player. I think he's back up.
Reese McGuire is a backup.
Ronaldo Hernandez is not a catcher to me.
I was going to ask because he's been hitting well. So I was going to ask.
I personally don't think he can catch. I think he could fake it in like a 20 game a year role if he hits enough, which I'm still not convinced how. I don't think his bat would translate well against major league pitching given how aggressive he is.
Right.
But he doesn't have profile as an everyday guy for me. They don't have anyone in the system like that. And it's why I think that's one of the biggest question marks heading the offseason is like, I would not be surprised at all if they made a run at just re-signing Vazquez. Like give him a 2-year, $20 million deal.
Yeah, it depends what his market is. I mean, because
I'm pretty sure the catching market this offseason is terrible. So,
if anything, if the catching market is terrible, that means his price goes up. Because if he's the best guy available, then he's going to cost more. Supply and demand. It's not like if the market is flooded with options.
That's why I said 10 million a year. Like that's a good deal for him. Like I would assume. Like, but anyway, I mean that's a discussion for the offseason.
Yeah.
But Reese McGuire is like whatever. I think that
that deal was about unloading the Diekman contract.
Yeah, it wasn't about unloading it this year. It was about unloading it next year. They didn't want to pay him $4 million next year.
Right.
And they also needed a catcher who can actually catch. And like that was the thing, like talking to scouts on McGuire. It's like, he can't hit for a lick, but he can at least catch.
Mm-hmm.
He's got catch. He can throw guys out. That's it. Like,
yeah,
that's fine. They needed that. and he's a left-handed hitter, which they didn't have. All the other catchers in New York that we just talked about are all right-handed hitters, so he gives them some balance there.
Why, if you're the White Sox, do you make that? Do you trade McGuire and a player named later? I guess it's because you don't care about Diekman's money.
Yeah, because it's $4 million is fine for Diekman. It's just the Red Sox didn't want to pay it because they have like other lefties.
Yeah.
And with the White Sox have multiple catchers. Like they have Yasmani Grandal. They have what's the other guy's name? They have Sebi Zavala.
Mm-hmm.
I don't exactly know if that's pronounced correctly, but like he was their third catcher. Like they didn't really. He's not exactly like it's a fungible piece to them. And like Zavala is outperforming him. Like Zavala is at least hitting this year. He's hitting a close to 300 with like a 400 plus slug. And I think they just basically decided like they need another lefty in the bullpen. With Garrett Crochet out for the year, they only have one lefty in their bullpen, so we can get Diekman without giving up much of anything.
Right, and the thing, and he's got a higher, like you're buying low to some degree.
Diekman's been good in the second half. You look at his stuff, like his velo's back. He's throwing strikes again. Like he's been fine for a couple weeks now.
Right.
I think on paper, like Diekman's a better player than McGuire. And if I personally, I would have rather like see what kind of like prospects you could get for Diekman. But
yeah,
they needed a catcher, and as I said, I honestly think that a big part of it was the left-handedness. Like they don't have a left-handed catcher in the organization in the high minors, so
right. And
left-handed
then
hitting. So
who knows what the player named later is?
I mean,
that's
probably
the other thing. It's probably nothing.
Great,
It's probably no one big, but
the thing is, we've said that before about guys like Christian Koss was decent. Like the player named later can be decent. We don't know.
Well, Koss was Yohan Ibar. You're thinking of
who am I thinking of? I don't know. There was someone who was a decent player to be named later, but yeah.
I mean, they got like Cubs. Jacob Wallace. Well, from the Cubs was that Zach Bryant? No,
I don't know.
All right, it's gonna bother me, but anyway, we'll move on. The other deal on that day was Tommy Pham for a player named later. Who that one I could see it being like you said, like a Jimenez type, like a good but not great guy who's eligible for the Rule 5 draft and needs to clear basically. Yeah.
I mean, I don't get why they didn't give up anything. Like, who cares? Like, he's a better than Franchi Cordero in right field, and he's playing left field, but like he's a better at the option at the plate. He gives them another guy you can slot at the top of the lineup. Like, I like that acquisition. I think it makes them a much better team than they were before. And it finally gets Jackie Bradley in the position he should have been at the first place, which is a fourth outfielder. So,
and that
I don't really get the pushback on that. Like,
has there been pushback on the Pham deal?
Well, people are making a lot of jokes about, they got like a guy who's most famous for fighting in the outfield and McGuire's thing. So it's like, but like, who cares? Like,
I mean, I
just don't care at all. Like, what they're doing on the field is what we should be focusing on. And Pham is like a usable player.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. I mean, it's interesting that they're putting him in left and moving Verdugo to right, because we were talking for a while about the fact that Duran should probably be in left field, and Verdugo could be in right, and that would put Bradley in center where he's great.
I mean, they're starting 3 left fielders right now. It's not ideal, but whatever. It is what it is. It's the road they've chosen, and it's what they're stuck with until Kike Hernandez comes back, which is who knows when. Who
knows when? Yeah. I mean, it was interesting to see them get the outfielder that they probably should have gotten to start the year, the first baseman that they probably should have gotten to start the year. Now, when it's like, it's like literally people were suggesting Pham as a free agent coming into the year, right? Like it's not a secret of his potential fit on this team. Is it a lack of urgency? Is it just waiting to play the market? Is it, needing to find value in deals like that for, to the point where it's not helpful?
I don't think we know the answer. I think at first base, they like Bobby Dahlbeck's weird, end of the season maybe gave them some confidence that he could handle the everyday role. He clearly can't. And in the outfield, like as Bradley got off to a good start, he was hitting fine through May. In June, like this is the thing that kind of bothers me about the narrative about the Red Sox season so far, is that Bradley, no one was complaining about Bradley when he was hitting like, his WRC plus was like 90 in May. Like no one cared. Like no one was saying anything. Mm-hmm. And then in June they were winning, so no one noticed that he was hitting terribly. And then it finally came up in July when half their team was on the injured list that, oh wait, like he's a 0 out there on offense. And like, that's the thing to me is that at the end of the day, I think that the problem is that Chaim Bloom and the Red Sox front office, they basically had the calculus that they could carry a couple of below average hitters at the bottom of the lineup because the other 6-7 guys were going to give them enough value, enough offensive output to hide those guys. And the problem was that this team is severely underperformed on offense. And I don't think that's like, Devers has been great. JD Martinez and Bogarts on paper, like their numbers are fine overall. They're just not they're not driving in enough runs. They're not showing any power. And
it's interesting because like Bogarts has been better on defense than
his defense this year has been surprisingly good. I mean, he made a brutal play like 2 nights ago, but
but still, it's like if you look at his like FWAR, he's up there with Devers. He's pretty close in a lot, but it's just offensively, he's not what he's been.
No,
that long stretch with no power.
And if you dig into it, it's like very fluky, basically, is what it says. Like he's got like the highest ground ball batting average like ever or something. He's hitting like 380 on ground balls or something absurd. And like he's just like, I mean, this is the thing. You look at like this offense and WRC plus wise, Devers is at 173. The next Bogarts is at 137. JD Martinez is at 124. That's 3 regulars above 100. Vazquez was above 100 also. He's at 111. He's not on the team anymore. But like, they Verdugo, Story, Duran, Arroyo, like Dahlbeck, Hernandez. Yeah, all those guys have been disappointments on offense this year, I would say. And I think that was the mistake they made, was that they thought they could get away with, having a couple guys at the end of the lineup because those other guys would make up for it, and they didn't. And that's what's weird to me is like, I feel like the players have really gone with this like us against everyone attitude, like us against the front office. They didn't help us out, where it's like, do I think there were mistakes made in how this team was constructed? Absolutely. But at the same time, I think the performance on the field by the players has been below par for a lot of them. Like, I don't think they've played up to their ability. And I think that's just as an important factor in the struggles of this team overall, and the lack of consistency. As you can't blame it all on not getting a first baseman, or not getting a right fielder when, the pitchers aren't carrying their weight, the hitters aren't carrying their weight. So I think that both sides are to blame for the struggles and for them being in the position they are in, and for them having to go out and get, a first baseman and a right fielder.
Well, I guess that's probably a good time to transition to that first baseman. The San Diego Padres are basically they're literally paying down all of Hosmer's contract except for the major league minimum, which I think is probably all they can do. You can't just send a guy to another team for free. The reason they do this, for those who are wondering, like, why on earth would San Diego do this, is that based on the new CBT rules, or at least this is my understanding, when the Padres trade Hosmer had a front-loaded contract. So it had a bunch of years at $20 million, and then the last 3 were all $13 million. So the AAV, the average annual value, was $18 million on the deal. Based on the new CBT, when you trade a guy, his average annual value for competitive balance tax purposes resets. It used to be that it stayed the same. It now resets. So when you trade Eric Hosmer, his AAV, I don't quite know how it works trading him mid-season, but it's probably at least a prorated AAV for this year at $20 million, and then 3 years at 13. So it's much closer to 13 than 18. So they're saving more than $4 million a year probably on the competitive balance tax going forward just by giving him away. And so then the Red Sox get a couple of meh prospects, Ian. I mean, Max Ferguson and Corey Rosier might be top 60. They're probably
they're top
back
60.
End if
they should be top 60.
But they're back ends. I mean,
it's like the 40. They're in the 40 to 60 range.
Yeah. And gave up Jay Groom, which I think a lot of people were like, kind of wringing their hands about giving up Jay Groom. I mean, here's the way you got to look at it to me. The Red Sox were acquiring a 40-man player, which meant you either needed to trade or just straight up DFA a 40-man player. So you might as well trade that guy, right? Make him the guy going the other way. For players who are not on the major league roster, Groom is probably the guy. I mean, they had a decision to make this offseason. He's only got one more option left. We're not convinced he's a major leaguer. Maybe he's probably a major leaguer, but he's definitely not a major league starter.
Well, no, I think the thing is too that people like he's a pedigree, he's a big name.
Sure.
He's not the player he was, or even his first couple of years in the organization. And I think that's the thing that I think gets kind of hidden because he'll have his like good starts and he'll get tweeted about and everything. But it's like at the end of the day, he's just not as good a prospect as he was when he first signed or when he was drafted. And he hasn't been the same since he came back from Tommy John surgery. His fastball's like 88 to 92 now, below average command and control. His curveball is like a 50, 55 pitch. Used to be like a 65, 70 pitch. Changeup is 45, 50, sliders a 40. Like it's a bucket of 45s and 50s, which when you have below average command is just not that exciting of a player. And that's kind of what he is now. And he doesn't really miss bats. He's had obviously some issues with conditioning, and I don't think he looked the best this year physically. And I just don't think he's like didn't ever really think he would pitch for the Red Sox in the major leagues, because for the reason you outlined, that it's his last option here next year. He's not going to be ready for a role, in my opinion. And I don't think he was major league depth next season either. So it's like, if you're going to move him off the 40 man at some point, you might as well do it now, get a couple prospects that, maybe you like them coming out of the draft. You think you can figure something out with them on offense and get Eric Hosmer. And like, I think that's a good deal for the Red Sox. Like
it's a free Eric Hosmer.
Yeah, like if you told me they traded Jay Groom for those two prospects, I'd be like, yeah, that's fine. I don't care. Yeah,
right.
Like perfectly defensible. Or if you told me they traded them just for Hosmer, I would have been like, yep, same thing. Like as long as they're paying down all the salary,
right?
And to get all of them, I think that's good value. Like and I don't think Hosmer is like the answer at first base, but you got him on the minimum to the point where maybe he plays well for 3 months and you can flip him the offseason for something.
Yeah,
like Hosmer on a minimum salary is a very tradable contract, in my opinion.
And, no question.
Whether he, maybe you do keep him up, and maybe they do some sort of like platoon DH thing with him and Casas next year if he's hitting well. Like, I don't really see this. All this does is it buys him time with Casas to allow him to develop further, and I think that's a good thing.
And it gives them a player this year because they've been adamant. Sorry to interrupt, but they've been adamant that they don't want to call up a minor leaguer to be the savior, which is what, Casas would have been coming up to become like the starting first baseman at a position where they've been getting nothing. This gives them that cushion, like you said.
Exactly. It gives them the patience that they can now call him up when he's actually ready, not like feel like they need to, which I think if they hadn't traded for Hosmer, I would have projected him to come up like this week. Now,
well, it would have been August 19th because you want him to retain his rookie eligibility for next year.
Okay, sure. Yeah, August 19th. But now it's like I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see him at all this year because they've got Hosmer, and if JD's there, as long as those two are healthy, there's nowhere to play him.
Which is not to say that you are projecting that he will not come up now. You're saying you would not be surprised if he did not, which is a different thing. I just want to make sure we're clear on what you're saying.
I would not be surprised at all if he did not come up this year.
Right. I think gun to my head, I would say he maybe gets a cup of coffee late just to give him like that experience of being on a major league roster. It depends on what they're doing.
They could also just do the thing they've done in the past where they call him up to Boston and have him hang out for a couple weeks, but not actually put him on the active roster.
That's true. That's a good point. That's a very good point. They could do that too. We'll see. We'll see what they do with Casas, but this doesn't block Tristan Casas. They could easily.
And like Eric Hosmer, he has his warts as a player. He's not as good defensively as his reputation says.
He's better than Franchy Cordero, which is the key thing.
He is, but Franchy Cordero is also not a first baseman.
Right, and that's the problem is you were playing Franchy Cordero at first base a bunch, and this allows you to put Dahl back in that bench role we've been saying for a long time.
On Fangraphs, he's severely negative WAR this year on defense.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
It has been for the last several years.
Interesting.
So yeah, his advanced metrics on defense are not good at all for what it's worth. But he's also at least a first baseman. He's not an outfielder trying to play first base. But yeah, if you look at his defense, this year, got 5 errors at first base. It's going to be an interesting. I'm interested to see how he looks, I guess, is what I'm saying, because there are some his UZR, there's certain advanced metrics that really don't like him. He's -2 outs above average at first base according to Statcast. So, he's not, but that's probably better than what they had before. But yeah,
Sure.
so I just think that, but I think the biggest thing for me is like on offense too. He like his WRC plus I think is like just over 100, which would be like, yeah, it's 107, which is like the fourth highest in the team.
But he's also
Wh-
he's a free league average hitter, right?
Yeah.
At the
Well,
position. That's
that's
the thing.
exactly it. But I think that also highlights how underperforming the offense was. That he's the fourth or fifth best hitter on the team with an
Mhm.
average WRC plus.
Right. Fair.
So
That's
yeah,
fair.
I mean, I think he's a good acquisition. He'll give you professional at bats. He'll hit a home run or two. Like maybe he can catch lightning in the bottle, and you can kind of figure something out of what he used to be back when he was like in his 2017 season. Like this obviously looks like an outlier now, but like maybe they
Mhm.
can figure something out to get him back to hitting the ball in the air more, because that is the biggest issue. Just look if you look at his like splits and everything, he just doesn't hit the ball in the air. His like launch angle is really low, like it's 2.6
Yeah.
degrees, whereas like in his peak when he was having good seasons it was like 6.1, 4.1. Like he just doesn't hit the ball in the air very much, and that seems to be like the biggest issue with him right now is his inability to drive the ball in the air. Ground
Yeah.
ball rate is 60% basically this year, 23% fly ball rate. That's crazy. That's so low. But yeah, I mean that's kind of the player he is. And it'll be interesting to see like if they can, maybe working with the hitting instructors or something, they can figure something out with him.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's fair. And so I guess that brings us then to the summing it all up. I think it's funny. Steve Peralta on his podcast, I saw a clip, and I think I completely agree with this take. Is that this trade deadline did not change anyone's mind about Heim Bloom. If you don't think
Nope.
Heim Bloom is doing a good job, you still don't think he's doing a good job.
Yep. I
If
agree.
you think Heim Bloom is doing a good job, you probably still think Heim Bloom is doing a good job. If you are in a wait and see, you are still in a wait and see.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing here to flip it. There's the saying that I hate to use because I don't want to characterize the team in a way that I don't mean, but there's the rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. I'm not calling the team the Titanic, right? But it's the rearranging the deck chairs part that you traded away your catcher and got way worse a catcher, which I think we can say unequivocally. To
Well, I mean,
get
I think you got worse on offense. Defense is a wash to me. Like I don't really. It's more or less the same.
a catcher, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, you got way worse on offense. Wait,
Like
yeah,
Reese McGuire can't hit really at all, and
no,
neither can
neither
Plawecki.
can
Whereas
Plawecki.
Vazquez, as we said, was like the fourth best hitter on the team. He
Vasquez
was
was
slightly.
starting to play a lot of first base. Put it that
Yeah,
way.
exactly. He was slightly above average. WRC plus. He was like 111.
Yeah,
Yeah. You got worse there, but you upgraded two other positions.
yeah. I mean, you got better at first, and you got better at we'll call it the third outfield position
Yeah.
because it's not right field. It's just the third outfielder. And I guess Cora actually just came out and said to I forget I think Catillo might have tweeted it, but it might have been Alex Spear. Basically all but said that Jackie Bradley's a bench outfielder now, which I thought was interesting that he came out and said it. Wasn't like
Yeah.
beating around the bush on it a little bit.
Well, I also think it's interesting, and this is like that, like Rob Snyder going on the IL is like, oh dang it, that's like not good. But like, if he was on the team, is Bradley the fifth outfielder?
Yeah, that would have been very interesting
Like, I
because
think
it's
he is, because like I
because if you
obviously,
look at it, if Ref Snyder didn't go on the IL, because Jalen Davis right now is the fifth outfielder.
yeah,
Jalen
Jalen
Davis would have
Davis
been
would
the
go
one to go
down.
down.
Yeah,
Yeah, Davis goes down and Bradley's the fifth outfielder. Yeah, that's
yeah,
weird.
because like Ref Snyder would play against lefties, and if you're pinch hitting, like he's going to pinch hit for Duran or Verdugo, and you're not going to pinch hit Bradley for Pham. So the only
Bradley's
use
a
of
defensive
he's a
replacement.
defensive replacement. That's it.
Starts against some righties.
Well, but does he? Like, you're not going to bench Duran or Verdugo against righties.
I guess
Like,
that's right.
and are you going to bench Pham against righties? Probably not. Like, he's a much better hitter than Bradley. So, like,
Yeah.
he really is like a fifth outfielder. And this is with Ref Snyder, but Ref Snyder's obviously hurt, so that's a moot point. But and like I think it's an interesting question. I think that Davis will go down for Hosmer tomorrow, I would assume.
Yes.
I think he has to because they don't have anyone else to play middle infield. If they send down Yomer Sanchez, who would be the only other one.
Yeah, because Sanchez is up until Story comes back.
Right. So they're going. So Bradley will be the fourth outfielder tomorrow. Once that move is made. But yeah, like I just.
Well, he's already. I mean,
Well, no,
he's
I'm
the
saying
only remaining bench.
Yeah, he'll be
outfielder.
the only bench outfielder.
Yeah.
But yeah, like as you said, they're better in a couple spots. They're worse in one spot. I don't think they made any like moves that changed the trajectory of the franchise in either way. Making them better or worse long term. I think they got a little prospect depth. They got, slightly better at the major league level. I think they have a better chance to make the playoffs now than they did a few days ago? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's like, I think that what they did is they kind of pushed off the big decisions and because something's going to have to give at some point. And it seems like this offseason is the big one because that's when all the guys are free agents. And that's when we're going to see I think this offseason is the first one where it'll really be like, we'll see what kind of commitment level Chaim Bloom is being given by ownership and like what his path for this franchise going forward is, because they're going to have a lot of money coming off the books and not a lot of internal options to replace those guys. And so, they're going to have to go out and spend. And I think that's, I know that, it seems like they're kind of, necessarily want to give out those huge free agent deals, but at some point you have to. Like, this is a star-driven league, and the teams that win the title have the best players. And if you're not developing those players, you got to go out and get them some way. And I think looking at what the Red Sox have, the positions they're going to have available going to the offseason and who's out there are definitely some guys who would fit really well. And I think that it'll be very interesting. And obviously, this will be a discussion for the offseason to see how they approach, shortstop, DH, starting pitching, like in the offseason. Yeah.
The last question, I guess, on the trade deadline, not a single bullpen move. And Bloom said that they were trying, I think, and that they just didn't like the prices. A second year in a row that they just didn't really like the prices for any of the, at least especially second year in a row on high end, and they just didn't acquire
if you look
anyone.
at what the top guys went for, like David Robertson went for like a top 10 prospect in the system. Like,
yeah,
the bullpen prices were pretty high, I would say. Like Jorge Lopez went for a lot.
Mm-hmm. It to me, does it say something about guys like Kelly and Herman and Bizzardo that they?
I mean, I personally have been advocating. I think they need to start turning this over. Like, I think that like Caleb Ort, like he's had his chance. I think it's time to put someone else in that spot. Maybe I guess Brazier, they seem to have a lot of confidence in still, but I just think that there are some guys in AAA who could help this team. And how would they have known about, like, John Schreiber wasn't on this team and was going up and down for a few weeks before they finally let him get settled. Like, I'd like to see them see if they could catch, lightning in a bottle with one of these other guys. And that's maybe their plan. I think we're going to see pretty soon, because this bullpen is gassed and they need some help. And this is also one of the reasons that I was advocating for Whitlock in the rotation, is having him in the bullpen severely hamstrings you because of his usage. Like, he can only pitch every 3 or 4 days, and he pitches for 2 innings. And using him like that, especially when you only have when you're limited to an 8, when you only can carry 13 pitchers, is tough. Like, I don't think you can that's not ideal, having a guy that you can only throw every 3 or 4 days for 2 innings in your bullpen. So and I think we're seeing it yesterday. I mean, they got away with it, but Sauer Moore had to pitch the 7th inning yesterday, because Schreiber wasn't available, and neither was Whitlock. And for
what it's worth, they have thrown Whitlock on no days rest and with 1 day's rest since he's come off the IL. Yeah, I'm looking at his game log right now. He threw both the 24th and 25th, and he threw both the 15th and 17th. So they are willing to throw him. Now, he doesn't do that often, huh?
I mean, that's not what they said they were going to do.
Well,
they literally said
it's what they're doing.
No, I know.
Because he came off the IL. He pitched on the 15th. That was the Friday game at Yankee Stadium. He pitched the Sunday, the 17th. He then got 6 days off, which I don't think was planned. I think that's just
that was the All-Star break. No, that
was the All-Star break. You're right. Okay, that was the All-Star break. So he pitches on the 24th, the 25th.
This is the 25th, 28th, 31st thing is what I'm used to. You only threw an inning in those things. That's the difference.
Well, no, he threw 2 innings on the 15th and then
Well,
one.
no,
on
I'm
the
saying
17th.
he threw an inning before. Like he threw 2 innings, then he came back with only 1. He threw 1 inning and came back with 2. When he thrown 2 innings,
How
they've
many
given him 3 days
pitches?
off every time.
Where's pitches? Come on.
It's like 13 and 18. When he's thrown 2 innings, they've given him 2 days or 3 days off every time.
Oh, there's the pitches. Yeah, so it's 30. You said 13 and 18. Yeah.
So like, but it's still like, okay, but that's the point. He's pitched 3 in 6 games. If he's your best, like, or 3 in 9. No.
Well, no,
Yeah.
he threw 23 pitches on the 15th. Granted, he was coming off the IL, but he threw 23 pitches and they threw him 2 days later. So, I mean, I don't think they're going to do that often. I don't disagree with your point. I'm just saying I don't think it's the kid gloves necessarily that they were handling him with last year. Especially as we get closer, if they're in contention late, I think then you have to use them that way. You have to be willing to bring them back on back-to-backs. You have to be willing.
I mean, but I think like, and then you look now, like he hasn't pitched since July 31st. Like he didn't pitch either the first 2 games in Houston, which were both close games. Like if they were going to bring him back, and like on back-to-backs or every 2 days, he would have pitched that second game in Houston. He didn't. Like I think that
is it that his arm just doesn't bounce back? You wonder. I mean,
no, I think it's just that he was used to starting. Like
yeah. But the thing is, he's now been in the bullpen. Like he was in the bullpen all of last year. He was in the bullpen for 2/3 of a month this year.
Yeah, but they stretched him out and made him a starter for 3 months.
Oh no. That's what I'm saying. So they stretched him back out. I mean, is it that do you start working him into that role? Like
I don't know. I'm just saying like I just think that if they were going to use him like as frequently as like on a normal schedule, he should have pitched that second game in Houston. He did.
I get
like,
that.
And he didn't pitch today, obviously, because they were losing. But like that shows me that their ideal situation is he pitches 1 day, gets 3 days off, comes back and pitches. And like
sure, but
I just think that when he's one of your 3 relievers you trust, that's just not an ideal bullpen construction.
Oh, I agree. And that's why I am saying, do they need to start working him into that role? Like they need to get away from that.
Well, but the question is like, if they think he's a starter long-term, maybe they don't want to do that.
Maybe.
Because like, I still think he's going to start next season. So it's like,
yeah, I think that they do want to try him starting. And for the people who are like, oh, he's better in the bullpen, like a 3 ERA starter is the equivalent to a 2 ERA reliever. Like, yes, of course, his numbers are worse as a starter. Every pitcher's numbers are worse as a starter. There's
him as like a number 4 starter is more valuable than the role he's currently in.
Yes, and here's the thing: like there are about 31-ish starters with a 3 ERA in baseball. There are about that many relievers with a 2 ERA. Like he's not a revelation as a reliever, and 5 and dive Frank as a starter. Like.
Well, and I think you just look at like the way the team is. I mean, this is getting out of ourselves, but like we've seen Josh Winkowski. We kind of know what he is. Like he's a depth starter. He shouldn't probably be getting the ball every 5th day. Like if you're telling me next season that at the very least, like you've got maybe Chris Sale, like I don't know.
Who the hell knows at this
like,
point?
Maybe James Paxton, but at this point,
who the hell knows at this point?
Like other than Nick Pivetta, is there a single starter I can confidently say will be with the Red Sox next season? No. Like in terms of like in the rotation and healthy.
Yeah. In terms of healthy, I think is the key way to put it.
Like that's why like they almost need Whitlock to be a starter next year for things to make sense. So it's like,
well, here's the interesting thing. I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but like Cutter Crawford lately, man.
Yeah, he looks really good.
Gosh.
My concern with him, and we see it tail off as he gets deeper into outings. And with his delivery and injury history, how is that going to hold up over 120, 150, 180, 200 innings? That's my big concern with him. Like the stuff is good. He's got 3 pitches, like, but it's just the delivery and the injury history and the build are just very big question marks to me. But I think you definitely have to start him the rest of the season and kind of see what happens there. But like with the bullpen, just to kind of wrap this up, like I would like to see them start playing like moving guys in and out. And I think I almost think you're going to have to, because the bullpen is just gassed right now. And the problem is that, and you look at this rotation, like if Bayo's hurt, that takes him out of the question. So you're back to 5 in the rotation. Like Winkowski is giving you what he can, that's, 5-6 innings of like, he doesn't strike anyone out. He gives up 3 or 4 runs. Like that's kind of what he is. Pavetta's really struggled of late. Evaldi was good. His velo is down. Like there's just a lot of question marks in the bullpen, and they don't have like a long man right now. Like the guys that you would have assumed are taking that role are their closer and their setup guy. So it's like you have like they just have a weird bullpen construction right now with Ort, Sourmore, and Brazier all more like short relief guys who like Ort, God bless him, like got thrown into basically just had to wear it today and pitch 3 innings. That's not the role he should be in. Like he's a 1 inning guy.
Yeah.
And so they need to figure something out with that. I'm just not sure what the solution is because as we talked about earlier, like they just don't have that many guys. They only have 3 pitchers on the 40 man who are healthy right now and not in the big leagues. And
yeah,
one
it's
of them
Mata. Yeah, it's Mata, Seabold, Darwinson.
Mata's not a consideration. Darwinson, we saw that one when he got called up, and Seabold is like he's their only depth starter. So it's like they're just not in a great position with the bullpen.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, tomorrow the only rested guy they're going to have in the bullpen, rested guys in the bullpen are going to be Whitlock, who will have 3 games off, and Schreiber, who will have had 2 games off after going back to back.
Yeah, and Houck probably wasn't even available today because he threw 2 back-to-back days, he threw back-to-back multiple innings in both. So yeah, it's like they're just
Although it was 20 and 15 pitches, but he was down and up.
Yeah, but still, it's like it's going to be an interesting. There's going to be the roster maneuvering over the next couple of weeks is going to be fascinating to watch because especially when they have guys coming off the 60 and everything, there's some moves that are going to have to be made.
You think they try and claim Dinelson Lamet?
I was wondering that. I mean, I think they should try to claim Pedro Severino because I mean, he was a starting caliber catcher for 2-3 years.
He'd be a fit. Absolutely.
So that'll be interesting.
If they claim him, do you DFA Plawecki? Or do you DFA?
You said you don't think they do that, but I don't know. I mean, I don't think you do.
DFA to be clear, I'm saying the reason they haven't DFA Plawecki. I'm not saying I don't think they will. I'm saying that's why they haven't. I think if the right opportunity comes along, I mean, again, it's a business, and it's like, dude, if anybody complains, like hit better than a 500 OPS.
Yeah,
throw someone out.
I also could see those guys getting claimed before they get to the Red Sox, so we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, Lamet's been terrible this year too. Like, it's not like he's been the same since he got back.
He has options though.
Yeah.
So,
but then you need a 40-man move for both of them.
That's true.
It's like,
that's true. Yeah. Yep. All right. Fair enough. Should we move on to emails? Again, if you want to send us your emails, it's podcast@soxprospects.com. Hit us up. We got a bunch of them again, Ian. Our first email comes from someone who wished to remain anonymous. The anonymous emailer. The anonymous emailer says, longtime listener, first-time caller. You're not a caller. You're an emailer, sir. Was wondering what exactly distinguishes the corner infield types within the farm system. At the time I send this, Tristan Casas is ranked 2nd. Blaze Jordan is ranked 14th. Alex Benelis is ranked 17th. And Nico Cavadas is ranked 29th. Obviously, Cavadas has been crushing the ball the most out of any of them, but it still seems like Jordan and Benelis have more respect among the group for the SP rankings. Is it that the rankings are lagging? I don't think he means lag. I think he just means like inertia. Or is there a different way you all evaluate corner and field types? Thanks. Thanks, Anonymous. This is funny, Ian, because we were talking about this before the show. You think that Benelis should probably be lower and closer to Cavadas, which is probably fair.
Yeah, I think that Casas is by far the best player, and I think the reason is he gives you the best combination of hit, approach, power, and defense. I'm not very confident in Benelis' hitting ability. He's obviously really struggled since his promotion to Double A. I think he homered tonight, but I having seen him, I think his lack of bat speed is catching up with him finally. And this was always a concern with him was, he's got some power, but it's more of like a strength over bat speed swing. And I think it's kind of catching up with him that he's, against better pitching, he's struggling. And then who are the others? Oh, Jordan is like, Jordan's a tough one because obviously, he's performed pretty well this year, but there's some stuff like behind the scenes that is a little red flaggy. But he's also so young, so you kind of like give him a pass. But I have some similar concerns with him about like his bat speed and things like that. That probably won't be answered until he gets into the upper minors. And Cavadas is the same thing in the sense that we need to see what he does against more advanced pitching. He's obviously crushed A-ball this year and shown like very legit raw power. He's got a really good approach. Takes a lot of pitches, doesn't expand the zone, but we need to see him against more age appropriate pitching. And I think that's the biggest thing. Yeah. I think this year he's 90 plate appearances against pitchers older than him. So I'd like to see him, get up against more advanced pitching. And even with all that good stuff, like his hit tool isn't the same as Casas, and he has nothing defensively or on the bases. So that's kind of what holds him back, is that he's pretty much like it's power and it's an approach, and the hit is kind of what the wild card is with him. The other parts of his game aren't really there.
And keep in mind too is age, the relative ages of these guys. Kavadas is the oldest one of these guys.
I was about to say Casas is like younger than Kavadas and Benelis, even though he's been around.
He's like 4 months older than Benelis.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yeah. But that's like, I mean, he started the year in AAA as opposed to Benelis, who started the year in High A. Benelis is like a May birthday. Casas is a January birthday.
Okay, fair. Yeah.
Same year. And then Jordan is the youngest by like 2 years.
Obviously,
or more than 2 years. He's a December 2002 birthday, compared to Benelis, who's the next youngest, is a May 2000 birthday. So he's more than 2 years younger than anyone else we're talking about. So that's why he gets more runway. And that's why Kavadas, he's the oldest by more than a year. He's older by more than a year than Benelis, I think, and definitely than Casas. So yeah, it's of course he's older than Benelis. Benelis is younger than Casas. But yeah, so he's more than a year older than Casas, who's the second oldest of the group. So that matters as well. So that's a big part of it. Next email comes from Jake, who says, "Hey guys, hopefully this prospect doesn't experience the same kind of fall like the last one I asked you about, Gilberto Jimenez. Obviously, Marcelo Meyer is having an impressive year with his stat line numbers. He's just under the magical 300, 400, 500 slash line. But when I looked at some of his underlying numbers, I noticed some interesting things. He has a great walk rate of 14%, but he also has a strikeout rate of 27%, while his average on balls in play is almost 400. I was wondering if these numbers could be explained by the level he's playing at, the walk rate because of the lack of control, and the BABIP because of the defense or lack thereof at A-ball. If you could give some context or insight to those numbers, I'd appreciate it. Thanks for all the great coverage, Jake." It's a question that I see a lot on the forum about, Meyer's strikeout rate is higher than Jordan's. Like, not that Jordan should be ranked higher, but like, why are we, and here's the thing is, we're not dinging Jordan for having a high K rate. It's his first, for me, Ian, it's his first full year in pro ball. I'm not super concerned about the K rate. It's not where you'd like it. He also hasn't been healthy a lot of the year. If I think the sample size is still such that like he could easily work his way out of it. I don't know what your thoughts are on the K rate in particular with Meyer. I mean, average on balls in play is average on balls in play. Like, that's not something the player controls. Like, that's going to be what it is.
Yeah, I think that, and I think this actually applies to someone like Miguel Blaze also, because I know his K rate's being cited too. That this is something you can't really pick up unless you're seeing them like at the ballpark or talking to people who are. And it's like there's a very big difference in like quality of at bats, and like there are bats that end in strikeouts that are fine. Like, if you're putting together a good at bat, you're taking some good pitches, fouling some pitches off, and eventually end up striking out on a good pitch by the pitcher. Like, that's fine to me. And I think with Miguel Blaze and Meyer, they both show good feel at the plate. They could both show like some, they're still developing their approaches, but they have an idea of what they're doing at the plate, and they're going up there with a plan, and they might not execute in every at bat, and it might lead to some strikeouts, but you can see there's like there's the feel for hit. There's things like that. Whereas like there are other guys who just, the K rate might be lower. And I think Sedan Rafael is a good example of this. He does not have a plan at the plate. He's just going up there, and because, he's just making contact on pitches a foot outside of the strike zone and getting himself out. And I'd much rather have an at bat that ends in a K that's like a 6-pitch quality at bat than a 2-pitch at bat that ends in a tap out to the pitcher. And that's why I think that like you have to understand how they're getting to the K rate they are. And like, it's not that they're up there, they're free swingers, and that's what's leading to it. Like, is Meyer chasing a little more than I would like? Sure. But he also is hitting velocity. Like, he's hitting the ball hard when he does. He's hitting lefties too. Like, there's a lot of like underlying metrics that are still encouraging for him. And same thing with Blaze. Like, Blaze is crushing fastballs. He's struggling against secondaries. Don't get me. And that's what's drawing it. And that's what's leading to the majority of his Ks. But he's not chasing that much and he's not missing pitches in the zone. And that's like more what I like to see than, it's the underlying stuff that is what we're looking at with these players more than just the overall K numbers.
Yeah. And it's still, you can also have the concerning pieces of this, Ian, without striking out a lot, right? Like you might not have a high K rate and you might still be missing a lot of pitches in the zone because you've got a very good approach and you're not chasing.
Yeah.
So, and that's not going to get exposed until you get to the upper minors. And these are the things, go back and listen to the interview we did with Brian Abraham. He's talking about a lot of this stuff, right? It's chasing pitches out of the zone. It's in zone. Are you swinging and missing? Are you hitting the ball hard? Those kind of things. And those are the things that the teams are looking at, not just the Red Sox, all teams. And those are the things that we're looking at and why we might not be concerned about a K rate. It's how are you getting to that K rate? So thanks for the question. It's a good one. Next question is from Joey. Joey says, greetings, SP crew. I was in Hartford this past weekend for Ceddanne Rafaela's recent explosion. He went 4 for 4 with a home run, walk, stolen base, and 2 RBI. He also made one of the most impressive over-the-shoulder catches I've ever seen, running into left field from shortstop. Did you see that play? Ian, he caught it with his bare hand at his second best position, mind you. Anyway, people on Twitter love to point out that his high hands are remarkably similar to Mookie Betts, and he is similarly small and effortlessly athletic. But based on the questions you've asked about his hit tool, I was wondering if Enrique Hernandez might be a more accurate best case comp. He could be an aggressive, streaky, spark plug type hitter and add tons of defensive value all over the park. It seems it might not work as a regular, but that seems to be the story of Hernandez's career as well. Let me know what you think. Thanks, Joey. What do you think about that, Ian? I thought it was an interesting thought at the very least.
Yeah, no, I'm looking. I think the big thing with Hernandez is Hernandez has walked, like his career walk rate is like almost 10%. It's 9.3. And I don't see any way Rafaela gets there with what he currently is doing. Like he's a sub 5% walk rate for me guy.
Yep.
And I think that's why like the person I've been throwing on is like Alcides Escobar. Maybe a little Rafaela might have a little more power, but it's someone who like, he's not going to strike out that much. He's not going to walk that much. He's going to play really good defense, steal a few bases, hit a few home runs, but he's also going to hit like, 240 to 260. And I do think that, long term, it's still to be determined whether or not Rafaela does have an everyday profile or if he is more of a utility guy. And I agree that like there's definitely, I think, frankly, the most likely outcome is that his best role is as a utility player, like playing multiple positions, using his defensive versatility and, not getting overly exposed in the lineup because of his, poor approach. I don't necessarily think would translate well into an everyday role, especially against more advanced pitching.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Our next question is actually also about Kike Hernandez. And I just want to a word of advice for folks who want to email. When you are going to send the email, before you send it, read it, reading it out loud to yourself. We got a bunch of really long emails, or not a bunch. We got a few really long emails in this group that like, I'm not going to read the whole thing. Just because we don't have time to read your whole email. Thank you for the emails. They're very thoughtful and I appreciate them, but like, send them to us in a format that we can read on the show. So this next email is from Mike, different Mike. And to summarize it, he says, on a recent podcast, you were discussing this year's Red Sox team and played a little devil's advocate / what did you expect with some of the underperforming aspects of the team, specifically Bobby Dahlbeck at first base in the bullpen. Well, totally fair. I think we also need to add Kike Hernandez's production into that. Especially considering Kike's offense. He's always been worse when he plays the outfield. And this year, he's been exclusively a center fielder. So he cites his splits playing second base versus playing center field, which to me, Ian, I want to see what years he's primarily playing second versus center. I think that's a part of it. I can't imagine playing center field really makes him a different hitter than when he's playing second. But anyway, he's TLDR version. Last year when playing the outfield, Kike Hernandez had a 671 OPS. That was consistent with his 684 OPS playing the outfield. Now that he's a full-time outfielder, his 613 OPS this year is down, but it's closer to his career outfield OPS than one might think. Thanks, Mike. Here's the thing with Kike Hernandez, and I'm trying to pull up my tweet about it. He actually has like 4 very distinct parts of the season before he got hurt. He started horrible, like god awful. He got better for a little bit and he had another awful stretch and he was starting to hit his way out of it. at like league average for a center fielder production. So basically, for about 80% of his season, he was a league average center field hitter. The problem was that for the other 20%, he was like a 400 OPS guy, like just brutal, like 1 for 30-ish stretch or something like that. Just awful, 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 awful. Because he then gets hurt, he doesn't get to continue hitting his way out of it. So I don't buy that it's a look. I have no problem with going into this year with him as the starting center fielder. I don't have any problem with expecting at least league average offensive production from him.
It's interesting. He's actually not wrong. I'm looking at his career stats. At second base, he's a career 272 hitter. In center field, he's a career 219 hitter. That's in over 1,000 plate appearances in center and almost 800 second base.
Mm-hmm.
He's also in 254 PAs in left field, is like 194. In right field, 271. But yeah, no, it's definitely something interesting. And I do wonder if maybe there's like more of a wear and tear for him playing in the outfield than in the infield. He's having to exert more on defense, but I also do think with the Red Sox per se, it might just be like a small sample thing, as you said. But I mean, if you look at like 2021, he was, in 2021 in at second base, he had 339 and 201 plate appearances, and 362 plate appearances in center field. He had 213. So with the Red Sox, it's been a pretty consistent trend. But yeah, I think it's just hard to say given how this year's gone for him. Like, who knows what would have happened if he had stayed healthy and whether he was going to continue to hit. So
yeah,
I mean, it's hard to say.
Yeah, so he had an 0 for 17 stretch in the first 4 days of the year, first 4 games of the season. He then hit for like a 730 OPS, 740-ish OPS for the rest of April. From April 30th through May 11th, he went 2 for 32. And then from May 13th to June 7th, he was again hitting at like a 740-ish OPS. And Major League center fielders are hitting like a 690-ish OPS. So, I mean, again, the problem is his season has basically ended on June 7th. Like, he's now been out for 2 full months. So he hasn't had a chance to hit his way out of it the way other guys might. So it's an interesting thought. Again, like you said, he's not wrong. But I would like to investigate what the kind of underlying reasons are for that. Our next question, Ian, comes from Alvaro. He says, Pedro Castellanos. I think this guy keeps posting about Castellanos on the forum. Pedro Castellanos keeps hitting in AAA last 2 years. Better contact, better power. Do you buy or sell? Is he? I think there's some typo issues. I think he's asking, is he better or worse than Bobby Dahlbeck? Any updates on the scouting? And then he asks if there's any updates on Mata, how he looks, which I think we've talked about recently. But Castellanos, Ian, again, there's someone on the board on the forum who doesn't understand how Castellanos isn't a top 60 guy, which, I mean, if you wanted to put Castellanos in your top 60, I wouldn't argue with you. To me, it's a profile thing. It's a profile thing.
He has a 2% walk rate this year.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that? It's 2%.
I mean, I didn't know it or not know it in either direction.
But yeah, no,
really bad chase rate.
It's a really bad approach. Like he doesn't walk. He's very aggressive. He doesn't really know the strike zone that well at all.
Lefties eat him up.
Yeah, he's just like, if you see his swing, he doesn't really have that much bat speed. That, like, it's just not an approach or swing that is destined for success at the major league level. If you ask me, and he also doesn't really have a position. So it's just like the overall profile isn't there. And, like, I mean, yes, he's hitting well in AAA. It's 98 plate appearances. He also has 2 home runs. Like, it's like 100 WRC plus. Like, he's not hitting for much power. He makes some contact. He strikes out a decent amount. Like, it's just not the type of profile that I think has a future with the Red Sox long term.
Do I have any problem giving him a AAA roster spot? No.
No, he's a fine he's a good org player.
Do I think he plays meaningful, gets meaningful at bats for the Boston Red Sox? No.
He's a good org player. Would I be surprised if someone gave him a cup of coffee at some point? No, but, like, I don't think he's someone who's going to ever, like, stick on a major league roster for several years in a row.
Mm-hmm. Our next email comes from our friend Aaron. It's another long one, so let me try and skim it. Basically, he's a buyer of what Chaim Bloom has sold since he's come on board. I accept that this team hasn't performed. I was prepared, if bummed out, for a sell-off, but I wasn't prepared for what seemed to happen. The pieces that came in on the Vazquez and Hosmer trades are decent, but based on what you've tweeted, Ian, hardly game changers. Meanwhile, the team seems devastated about Vazquez being traded. Adding Pham and Hosmer almost feels insulting. And he added later that he sent this before that he knew Hosmer's entire contract was being paid down. So that makes it less brutal, but he doesn't understand. What he doesn't understand, and we got another email about this, is not getting under the CBT, if nothing else. He says, I try to be a rational fan, but I'm just really puzzled and left cold by what happened. It seems like status quo, but somehow worse. Yes, I know we have to wait to see what happens in the fall, but nothing they did today says to me we're setting up for the big splash. Well, I mean, you know what the big splash needs to be?
Devers.
I mean, that's the thing. And that's why for me, look, there's a thread in the forum right now. Is Chaim Bloom doing a good job? It depends on what you think his job is, right? Is he being brought in to maximize your chances to win the second you're competing?
He's not Dave Dombrowski.
Seems
That's
clear.
Not how he
that's clearly not how he operates. To me, I am reserving judgment until we know what happens with Xander Bogaerts and Rafael Devers. If they are both, well, and here's what I'm saying. It's not that they need to re-sign both of them.
They need to re-sign Devers.
Well, they need to re-sign Devers, or it's just what does the team look like with one or both of them gone, or neither, or both? Like, where are we at once their situations have been dealt with?
Yeah,
at that point, I think we've got the sample size.
It's a fair question. I think that, like, the CBT thing is weird. We don't know the exact numbers, but I think
we do know they're over.
They're over, yes. But what I'm guessing is that the only way they could get under was trading like JD or Eovaldi. And if you do that, you're basically waving the white flag, which it's clear, like as Chaim Bloom talked about, they didn't want to do that. He wanted to give this team an opportunity to get to the playoffs. And I agree with that decision. I think it's a team of veterans. It's not a team that you want to run out the season on. You know what I mean? This is not a team that I don't think would handle well, like having to play meaningless games in September. And by making those incremental upgrades at other positions and keeping JD and Eovaldi, this is a team that has a chance to make the playoffs still. And who knows, like they just, they've beat the Astros, what is it, 5 out of 6 times this year, or 4 out of 6 times. Like, yes, they've been terrible against the AL East, but they've still beat some good teams, and they would be a team that I feel like other teams would not necessarily want to see in the playoffs, given their track record of success in the postseason. So, like, I agree with giving them run, but I think that's the issue, is like, it's the catch-22 of, yes, you could trade Eovaldi or JD, but to get under, but then it's you're getting under potentially partially for the QO, but you're not going to be able to give those guys a QO because they're not on your team anymore. And B, you're basically waving the white flag. And I think that was the calculus, that it doesn't seem like there was a pathway to get under without severely impacting the odds of them making the playoffs.
Yeah, look, if they're over by like 400K,
then that's a different story. Yeah.
Then be pissed. But if they're over by, even if it's like
3, 4, 5 million, like there's nothing you could do. Like there was no way to get under. Yeah.
What do you want them to do? Let's look at the 40 man. Like,
I think the thing that you can say is that, well, if they're going to be over, they should have spent further over. And I think that's a fair critique.
Yes, correct.
But
correct.
I also think that I still want to see Chaim Bloom in a normal offseason. Like, give me an offseason that isn't like cut short by COVID or labor negotiations or whatever. Like, I think the team would have looked very different if there wasn't like that long, 60, 70, whatever, how long it was.
And to be clear, it's not the way I take what you are saying is it's not an excuse for Chaim Bloom. It's that everyone's off season was weird.
No, yeah, exactly. It threw off everything. Like, there weren't that many trades, like, and then there was a rush to do them at the end of the season. And I think it just changes the whole dynamic of, usually in an off season, it's like thing A happens, so I can respond. I can, react with thing B. And it was like, we have 1 week to sign people, and then everyone's going to get locked out. We need to get this done as quick as possible. And then this is going to wait. And like, I just think the whole order of operations gets disrupted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. Yeah. And I'm looking at the 40 man right now. The players they could have moved their prorated salary for this year and gotten under, if they wind up like 4 million over, right? Or 3 million, even call it. If it's 3 million, it's got to be someone who's making more than 6, at least. right? I mean, it's probably 7 or 8. The players they could have moved, say, let's call it 7. Okay. Trevor Story not getting traded. Jackie Bradley is an interesting consideration. I don't know how you're getting someone to take his money, though.
You're not. You're going to have to give something to get rid of him.
Although, and actually, what is his? No, because yeah, exactly. And you're going to have to give something up. Rich Hill doesn't make enough. Paxton doesn't make enough. Waka, maybe, but who's trading for him when he's on the IL?
Yeah, he was on the IL. You're not going to be able to trade him.
Kike Hernandez, same thing. And then you're getting the Eovaldi, JD Martinez, Rafi Devers, Chris Sale, Matt Barnes. No one's trading for Xander Bogaerts.
They just, the way the roster is currently constructed, it's just they don't have those like those mid-tier salary guys, that many of them that are tradable. They traded the one that was the most tradable, which was Vazquez.
Right. Next question comes from our Patreon supporter Forrest, who says, is Tanner Houck done as a starter? Do you all feel the bullpen is his place? Seeing Spencer Strider doing so well with just 2 pitches has me asking. Strider's stuff, is it just that much better? Thanks again, Forrest Perkins. For those who are wondering, Strider throws his fastball 68% of the time, the slider 26% of the time, and a changeup 5% of the time. I think that's it. Is it that the stuff is just that much better? And his walk rate isn't great. It's 29th percentile, but everything else, I think it's just everything else. I mean, he's 99th percentile in strikeout rate. Doesn't allow barrels.
His stuff is just so much better than Houck's. Like,
yeah,
I mean, yeah, that's what it comes down to. Is the stuff is just significant. Like compare their 2
38% K rate. 38% K rate.
Compare their 2 StatCast pages, like, and you'll see that. I think Houck is done as a starter. I think that the role he's in is I actually don't think it's the best for him. I think the best would be the multi-inning relief role. But I really? Do think, but I like they don't have a choice now with, he's kind of been shoehorned into the closer role. And I think he's doing a good job there. But yeah, I mean, you look at like Houck's problem is you look at the pitch data. His only consistent pitch to get people out is his slider. And he goes through stretches where he can't land that for strikes. And if he can't land that for strikes, he's in big trouble. Strider has 2 pitches that are just unhittable. Like no one can touch his fastball. No one can touch his slider. In fact, his changeup this year, hitters are hitting 071 against it.
Well, because he's spotting it in the right places.
He also is only throwing it to left-handed hitters. Like it's the Houck thing is like he's thrown more changeups than Houck has thrown splitters this year. And that's the thing is like, his changeup is at least usable to lefties. But his fastball is also so dominant that it doesn't really matter that much. Whereas Houck's sinker is getting hit pretty hard this year, like 281 batting average, not getting hit for power, but like people are getting on base against it. So I think it's just Strider has 2 much better pitches than Houck's, pitches. Like Houck's slider is a plus pitch, but Strider might have like 270 pitches.
Yeah, it'd be like if Houck's fastball, even that alone, was as good as the slider.
Yeah,
then
there's also like people. There's also people who aren't convinced Strider can hold up as a starter long term either. And like I think that's the thing that I feel like we don't talk about enough is like when we're making these projections, we're talking about like over the course of their career. We're not like everyone. You can have a 1-year season where like you're an all-star, or a 1-year season where you're a starting pitcher, like
Justin Masterson.
Exactly. Like just because we say that we project Houck like best in like a bridge bullpen role doesn't mean like maybe he does get traded and they start him for a season, he has a good year, but then it's just over the course of the career is what we project them to be. Yeah. And so that's why like there are still people who think Strider long term might not be able to hold in the starting rotation, but with the way he's pitching right now, obviously you ride it as long as you can.
Yep. I mean, Justin Masterson was the one people were like, you said he'd never cut it as a starter. He had 2 really good years. And he had a bunch of really bad ones as a starter. And, he didn't even wind up going back to the bullpen. He just washed out of the league. But yeah, I mean, he was a league average starter or not even a starter. He was in the bullpen for a lot of 2019. His first full year as a starter was 2010, 84 ERA plus. 2011, he was an above average starting pitcher. 2012, he was a well below average starting pitcher. 2013, he was above average again and made an all-star team. And then he was below average the rest of his career. And again, I wonder if he had gone to the bullpen sooner, does that change his career? And that's kind of why we say that, these guys can have 1 year where they shove. But we'll see. Yeah. Our next question is from Tyler. He says, my question, when do international signings end up breaking into your rankings? And I just wanted to mention, he mentioned some guys in here that are in the rankings. So we rank the draftees are going to break in on the next ranking. But yeah, he mentioned Fraley Encarnacion. He's on the rankings right now. So we try and put him in. Look, I read this email just as a kind of a PSA of, you put the guys in there when they join the system. It's a bit of a dart throw based on, information we get at the time from, our sources, from public sources, all those things. And we do the best we can. But it is always going to be a bit of a dart throw. Guys might move a lot based on what they look like when we see them. But thanks for the email, Tyler. Our next email comes from Jake, and it's another super long one. And he basically says, he is asking, so it's their approach to acquiring pitching. I've noticed that they're disinclined to devote significant resources, whether draft money, international signings, free agent signings, or trades to add pitching since Bloom took over, which I don't know that I agree with. I'm not bringing this up to bash the front office, but just to get your opinion on the approach. In the last 3 drafts, the Red Sox have gone over slot for a pitcher just once. In July's draft, most of the resources were on high school hitters. They did use a lot of picks on pitchers, but they were all under slot guys. For free agent signings, the most significant free agent pitcher has been the very complicated, incentive-laden James Paxton deal, alongside deals like Wakas Hills, Martin Perez, Garrett Richards, etc. Much was made about the fact that they didn't even approach Kevin Gausman. On trades, they've acquired pitching and deals, including the absolute heist of the Phillies to acquire Pivetta and Seabold, and the pitchers received in the Benintendi deal. They also added bullpen help at the 2021 deadline. But in the Betts deal, they got 3 hitters. They traded a pitcher for Schwarber, et cetera. So he's asking if it's an organizational philosophy thing. To me, Ian, it's Theo Epstein once had a quote.
Well, before you jump in, with the Betts trade, it originally was going to be a pitcher. That's
true. And then they ixnayed the deal when it was clear Gratterall was a reliever based on his shoulder.
Yeah.
That's a great point, Ian. To me, so the Epstein quote is, you have to resist the urge to build a super team, right? You have to resist the urge to build a super team. This is a team that had Nathan Eovaldi, that had, in theory, Chris Sale each offseason, other than the Tommy John recovery one last year. But they still thought they were getting a healthy Sale back mid-year, right? And they got Sale back. It just didn't come all the way back, including with the changeup. They went out and got Pivetta, who I think I'm comfortable with him as a 3 at this point, right?
Prefer him as a 4 or 5.
Prefer him as a 4, but yeah. But it's just you don't necessarily, you have to resist the urge to build the super team, is the quote. And it's, look, should they have gone out to get Gausman? If you looked into as a Kevin Gausman fantasy owner, like, his year last year was a tale of 2 halves. Go look at Gausman in the second half last year. I was
speaking of 2-pitch guys also.
Right. I mean, he, look, as a guy who was gung ho on them signing Gausman before 2021, they didn't. Second half, he was not good, and it made me really worried. And that's why this offseason, I had no interest in Gausman for what he was going to sign for. In hindsight, yeah, it would have been great to have Kevin Gausman. But, here's the thing is the starting pitching hasn't been the problem, right? No. The problem with the starting pitching is these guys get hurt, which maybe that's part of the approach. And I think as far as amateurs go.
Well, but I think they put together enough depth there. The problem is, like, how do you predict you're going to be like Brian Bayo shouldn't be pitching for them this year, but they're on their 9th and 10th starters. Like, what are they supposed to do? Especially with the way the 40-man roster is constructed. Like,
I think the question is there an overall approach to pitching? And I do think that there is something to the amateur side of things.
Well, I think that I feel like I've talked about this theory before on here. And it's like with pitching, if you look at like the outliers in development of guys who don't receive big bonuses, I feel like they're way more on the pitching side. Guys turn into something that way outperform their bonus than on the hitting
especially
side.
The IFAs, man.
Yeah, IFAs, and I even think in the draft, like Spencer Strider's a great example. Strider was a 4th round pick who signed for slot. I think, and I've had this theory for a while that the way to approach pitching is volume based. You sign a bunch of guys with interesting pitch characteristics or developmental things that you think you can work on. And if you trust and you're confident in your pitching development, which I think they should be, I think their pitching development is good. I think that the guys they have in there do a good job. I think they've improved a lot of guys. I think, like guys like, Chris Murphy, Brandon Walter, like the list goes on and on. They've really improved and helped these guys develop along the way. Sign as many of those interesting guys as you can, both in the draft and internationally.
Yep.
And then they don't necessarily need to be for the biggest bonuses because you trust your dev staff. I think with hitters, it's the opposite. I think the blue chip hitters, for the most part, are the guys who turn into the studs. And that's, I think, kind of the approach they're going is like internationally, we'll sign the big hitters. We'll give a couple hitters $1 million plus each. Draft, same thing. We'll take hitters early in the draft who we think can develop into, everyday guys. Pitching, we'll find the guys that, especially in the draft this year, I think we saw it was more evident than before that, we find a guy with a good fastball shape, good carry, and some life, or we found a guy with a really high spin rate slider that we think we can maybe get his velocity to tick up and add a changeup to him. Like they all have one or two pitch traits or characteristics that you can build upon. And I think that's kind of what they've been looking for. And that's why you saw such a volume-based approach where, they took pitchers for like X number of draft picks in a row, or, 7 out of 8 picks was pitchers, or like things like that.
The biggest guys that are going to jump in these upcoming rankings are all pitchers who did not, you guys probably already know the names. It's Luis Perales. It's Elmer Rodriguez Cruz, the king of limbs.
Hunter Dobbins.
And the other, who's the other one? Well, he jumped previously.
Paez.
Jedickson Paez, but a guy who jumped previously is a guy I'm thinking of in Shane Drohan. He already jumped.
Yeah.
These are guys that jump after, oh crap, Shane Drohan's got a changeup now.
Yeah.
Holy crap. Right. And it's above average.
Yeah.
Right. Like, okay.
Yeah, it's like might be better than his breaking ball now.
Right. Like it's crazy. Right. And that's the thing is, hitters don't go from a 30 hit tool to a 60 hit tool. That's not how it works. Right. But a pitcher it almost seems like, heck, with Drohan's changeup,
Joey's changeup was a 40 last year.
It was a 40 and now it's a 55.
60. Yeah.
Like that doesn't happen with hitters. So
that's what I was saying. Like, that's like one of the things, like changeup, like Chris Murphy's another example of this. Like Murphy took great strides with his command and control as soon as he entered the system, and with his changeup too. Like they just have certain things they've been able to accomplish. And I think that's what was interesting to me. And I think they do a very good job developing changers. Brandon Walter's another one who took huge strides with his changeup. Bayo also, like they've done a really good job with changeups. A lot of the pitchers they took, if you look, they all have like high spin rate breaking balls. It's like high spin rate breaking balls or fastballs with like good life and carry. And it's like, those are things like if you have that and you can get that changeup, or you can, if they don't have the breaking ball, work on the breaking ball, like you can at least turn them into a reliever. And that's why I think you see like the volume based approach. And I think they're just, as we said, confident in their dev team that they can do that with the lower bonus guys. They don't necessarily need to spend that early money that they can be used on a blue chip hitter prospect for that.
And look, I'm not saying they're never going to use a high draft pick on a pitcher ever again. Right. Like say the Rangers take Marcelo Meyer. I'm not going to tell you they definitely, no question, would have passed on Jack Leiter. I'm not saying they definitely would have taken him either. Maybe they like Jordan Lawler or something, but like, if Kumar Rocker were there with their first round pick this year, I'm not saying they definitely would have gone with Mikey Romero. Like who knows? Right. I think it just needs to be the right guy. Next question, Ian, comes from a different Tyler, and it's a very simple one. I actually really like this question. It's going back to the Judd Fabian conversation from last week. I think it's fair to ask if you would rather have Judd Fabian or Nathan Hickey. Thanks for all that you both do. And the context to this question is Nathan Hickey was a somewhat surprising overslot bonus last year who got what did he get? 1 million, which was kind of surprising. And that's kind of what you could look at it as that's what keeps them from offering Fabian more to sign. Maybe not the 3 million he was going to get with Baltimore, but like,
I also think they don't think he was worth 3 million.
Well, right. And I'm just saying it's in theory, right?
Yeah.
Hence the question. It's not just the two floor. I mean, it helps they were teammates at UF, right? Yeah. I think it's interesting. I would go Hickey.
No, I would too. I think we talked about it at the time of the draft. That profile just isn't for me. I don't like college hitters who struggle to hit. And like the contact concerns, like Fabian's profile is just, I don't think, a very high success rate in transitioning to pro ball. And yeah, I think Hickey at this point, I mean, it shows Fabian came back this year and got $1 million bonus, like cost himself, you know, at least $1 million, probably closer to $1.5 million by going back to school. And I think that, you know, his flaws were further exposed this year. And that's why, I would take Hickey.
The interesting thing with Hickey went on the concussion IL today. So that's he's going to miss a week. I think it's like the third or fourth time he's going to wind up missing about a week's worth of games this year. Not a great receiver. I wonder how much longer he stays behind the plate. Because he can hit. Now, is he Will Myers? No. But I think it's fair to wonder if you start looking at another position for him soon, just especially given the way he's been banged up this year. Our next email, Ian, comes from Sean. It's our last email. It's another super duper long one. He said, and it's funny at the front, he says, sorry for the long email. Once I started, I just couldn't stop. There's a TLDR at the bottom. So I'll read that. He says, the Red Sox should have made all the same moves, but made one more trade to get under without giving up guys who they could QO after the season. Wouldn't this have been a big difference in the team for this year and would put you in a better position for the future with higher comp picks? And like we said, I just don't think, so he says maybe attach a prospect to Jackie Bradley or maybe Rich Hill. Rich Hill doesn't get you under. Probably. He might. We don't know how much they're over, and that's what makes the difference is we got to find out how much
if they're like $7-8 million over, Bradley won't even get them under. So that's what we don't know.
Right. Because you can't just look at what they're making. It's their prorated salary.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just the thing is
also like bonuses count into the CBT and stuff that we don't exactly know. Like, right? Doesn't it?
In terms of what? So like Rich Hill has performance bonuses for each pitch, which he's not going to hit any of them.
No, but I'm saying like if anyone has those count towards it, and doesn't like playoff like share you have to pay out count towards it potentially.
I don't think playoff share counts because then you'd be punishing all the playoff teams.
Okay, fair. I don't know, but like I don't think that it's impossible to say without knowing. And like I feel
we have to know how much they went over by. We can tell later.
I feel like I can say like if they were close, I feel like they would have gotten under. Do you know what I mean? If it was like 500,000 to $1 million, I feel like they would have made it work to get under. Like I wouldn't. I have a feeling it's going to be like 5 million plus or something.
If we find out after the season, Ian, that moving Rich Hill for a bag of baseballs would have gotten them under the CBT,
not ideal.
Then maybe I'm with you.
Yeah, but like it's hard to until we know. Then I'm not going to like assume that they messed up badly or anything.
And here's the thing. Someone has to be interested in making that trade.
Right.
Maybe nobody wants Rich Hill at his full contract.
Yeah.
Like there were teams interested in Rich Hill. We don't know what they wanted. Maybe they wanted the Red Sox to pay down his contract.
Yeah.
Right. We don't know what the offers were. And that's part of why I am loath to ding, especially for trades that weren't made. Right. Like we don't know what the offers were that were on the table. And so that's why I
would love to know what they were, but we do not know. Sure. So until but it's so hard to say. And that's why I think like just overarching when we're talking about the trade deadline, like we're only judging on what we know. Like it's hard, like in a perfect world, maybe there were other trades that would have been great to do, but like, we don't know. It's just impossible to say. And it's like, I don't want to speculate that like, oh, they should have traded like Eovaldi for this, or what if they traded JD Martinez for this or Rich Hill for this? Like, we just don't know what the available options were.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you everybody for the emails. We're going to wrap it up. You can follow us on Twitter. You can go to @SoxProspects on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Ian @Ian Cundall. That's IANCUNDALL. And follow me @SP Chris Hatfield. We want to thank our $5 level Patreon.com/SoxProspect supporters. That's Deb Kendall, Andrew Wallen, Lendell Martin, Ernest Shermer, Kyle C., Tyler Woodrow, Mr. Walsh, Jeff Trainer, David Nardone, Tim Harding, Bill Stanton, Evan Kirkwood, Chris Fox, James O'Hara, Nathan Kenyon, Ben NRI, David B., Ben Burnett, Al Mendel, Kevin Katrides, Paul Denyer, Steve Gregory, James Bailey, Andreas Goldstrand, Corey Perrick, Mark Herman, Brian Cowan, Andrew K., Jeff Harwood, Dusty G., Michael Murphy, Bob Introne, Pavel, Jordan Shabbat, Jeffrey Scruggs, Mike Perwano, Chris Bollier, Curtis Waltman, Michael Stewart, Caleb Farron, John Kane, Jason Stoneburner, Jason Parker, Mike Mignosa, Jeff Richardson, Eric Peterson, Michael Cullen, John McGee, Nicholas Lenson, Paul Manish, James P. McMahon, and Jim Tuttle. Thank you all for your support. We appreciate it. Ian, I think that will wrap it up for this episode. We'll be back in everybody's eardrums probably. Oh, yeah, definitely next week. We're going to have to talk about rankings if I ever get mine done. Sorry. But yeah, we'll be back in your eardrums soon with more. Thanks for listening. We'll be back at you soon.